Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Let's just wait 1 minute more to let everybody connect. Nice to see you all after a while. Sorry for the delay. Okay, so I will start with a very quick introduction and of course some technical information that is always good to remind. So let me share the screen. Okay, so voila, welcome to the 5th capacity building webinar of the BRIGHT project. Today is the last webinar after 4 webinars that we started in the last year. So before going into the content of the webinar, I remind you all that there is the interpretation available on Zoom, so you can select on the bottom of the screen the interpretation bottom, and you can select the language you want to listen. The webinar, there is the possibility to listen in Italian and in English. If you cannot see this bottom interpretation bottom, then this means that you need to download the last version of Zoom. It's going to be very quick. So in case you cannot see this this bottom, you can download it and then join the webinar again. So as I was saying, this is the last webinar. We started in October with the first webinar, and then until now we arrived to the last webinar. So now I will do a very quick introduction of the main topics we had discussed before, and then I will leave the floor to the speakers of this webinar. So we started in October with in getting to know each other, in which we started to go deeper in the topic of the BRIGHT project, and we started also to discuss and understand which are the biggest challenges identified at local level for women working in agriculture. So we discuss about the difficulties of the women of the in general underrepresentative groups, and the challenges also of the civil society organization to respond to these challenges. As well, a third main challenge that came from the discussion was also the difficulties of the institution at the institutional dimension to respond to these challenges. Then we moved to the second webinar, and we went deeper in the topic of the collaboration agreement. Together with the LabSUS team and the LabSUS expert, we discussed and we understood from the practical and theoretical perspective what are the participation agreements. We understood which are the main tools and the main approach to apply participation agreements. And then we move to the third webinar, in which we discuss more about experiences from the field, so engaging representative women. And during the third webinar, we started with the topic of sexual harassment in the formal economy. We discussed with Celeste Sacomano about this topic. Then also we could discuss with the experience of Colori Vivi about mediation as a daily bottom-up process. And then also we had the we could discuss and share with the expert of the Bright project in south of Italy about the experiences from the reflection action circles that we'll discuss also a little bit later. To conclude, then we also talk about empowerment and work-life balances. So conciliation also, I mean, across different countries. So the main differences and also the common points. And then we arrive to the fourth webinar. The fourth webinar tackle more the rights of agri workers. So on one side, we discuss about good practices of networking and also good examples and about how to defend the rights of agri workers. And so this festival was, this webinar was organized during the Terra Madre Food of the Slow Food. And we discussed with Gaia Salvatori about fair food, how to make it possible. And we could also receive from Elisabeth Tauroni from ALDA some key points and key features on how to apply an awareness campaign, so how to reach and how to deliver our messages to the public. And we talked with Grazia Moschetti from ActionAid about good examples of networking, but also narrative, so how to share the voices of women working in agricultures. And we could also discuss with Ivan Sagnier from NOCAP about the activities of NOCAP in mediate and to defend the rights of agri workers in the south of Italy. So today is the last webinar, is the final gathering and the collective reflection. So we will in some way touch the main topics that we have discussed in the previous webinar. We will go a little bit deeper into the discussion. Then also we will reflect together on how to move on, and so how to apply what we have learned in the previous webinar. So today's agenda, it's quite intense. So we will discuss with Grazia about the reflection action circles. So about the experiences and the feedbacks of the meeting that just concluded. Then together with Valentina Vasilionova from Trade Union of the Agricultural Workers, we will discuss about practical advices to reach women in Bulgaria. Then we will have the possibility to have an overview about the comparative analysis of the Bright project that has been conducted by the Labsus team and by Marcella Iannuzzi. And then we will discuss with Pietro Elisei from Urban Sofia about community lab urban transformation, and so about local projects as drivers for sustainable planning choices. Then in the end, we will have a moment of discussion to see how we can actually commit ourselves in apply the main topics that we have discussed in the webinar in our communities, and then our webinar will come to the end. So I will now stop sharing my screen. I see that other people join to the webinar. So I will now leave the floor to Grazia from Action8, project coordinator of the Bright project. And Grazia will present us the main output, and she will share with us the feedbacks from the reflection action circles. So let's see if I need to share. Grazia, do you want me to share the screen, or
no,
you want?
I'll share it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh, there's a supporter, Daniela. Zoom said that I'm not able to share the screen as a participant.
Yeah, I just
yes.
Yeah, I make you co-host, so you voila.
Give me a moment.
Now you should.
Okay. Let me put down this. Okay. Oops. Let me go to the beginning. Okay, here we are. In the previous midterm meeting of Bright in December, we have talked about Bright through the feminist research guidelines of our international federation. And so I would like to guide you in the reflection action circles with our lens. And reflection action circle are laboratories for women, and they are part of the participatory process of Bright, which include a community leader training program, the reflection action circles, and the community labs. The three main principles are the one you find into the circle. People-centered evidence gathering with women at the core, collective analyzed with knowledge, enables multiple power shift. Okay. Okay, the main issue we went through with women was related to the decent work in Italy. Here you have part of an interview done by Irina, our partner from CPE in Romania, and here you have the evidence of the working condition of these women, and they work more and more compared to the standard of the regular contract, and they work 7 days per day without any day to take rest. And they spend all the day and also the night inside the field because it means that they could gain €5 more, and for them it's a lot. And then they don't have any access to break during the day, the labor day, and they work under rain, hailstorm, everything, and they work also during the night. Women who participate in the circle in Apulia, said us that they choose to work in a mushroom field because so she was able to working during the night and then coming back and help her daughter with the school, with the homework and so on. So it means that her daughter stayed alone all the night. Sorry, let me close the door. There's the dog. Okay, here we are. And also they are charged for the transportation cost, also if it's not allowed by the regular contract. And what about the way they come to work in Italy? The women finding out about the job opportunity from other family members, and sometimes they have short contracts already in the country of origin. It means that they are hired for example, 1 month, and then they stayed 4 years without any opportunity to go back and visit their family and have rest. And another main issue of the reflection action cycle was the status of our public services. We know that public services are fundamental to reach their rights, and they are completely excluded from these services. And in particular, they say that when they go to the public offices, they are pushed away because they are dirty from the fields, and that they are completely excluded from the access to their rights. And we had about 100 women involved in the reflection action cycles, and they say that they need about 5 years to be aware of their citizenship rights, and that local association, local networks are more prepared on the rights of people coming from third countries, and not aware of the EU citizenship rights. And this is another obstacle they find on their path to rights. Then another issue is about the institutional trust. They don't trust the institution at all, and there's no way for the institution to reach out these women in the local context. And so, about the change that took place, we can say that this space in the reflection action cycle allowed them to be active players in their communities. And all the time they say this is the first time we have voice, and we have voice with other workers like us, and so they were able to represent their own needs, and they were a very active part of the research on the status of public services in our country. And from a psychological standpoint, we observed also the improvement in self-esteem and self-determination. And furthermore, identifying needs and rights that were violated allowed the group to better understand how they can strengthen if they stay together. And the women workers became more and more confident in the idea that together they can bring about change. I will not take more time. I just conclude saying that we are working with them for a manifesto which will look to their needs and the institutional response from here to the next 5 years, because some issues are we don't have enough time and resources now only with the Bright project to give a solid response to their needs. And so Bright is a first step. And as women workers said, it's disruptive compared to the context they are in. And so we hope that this is just a starting point to work together with the women at the center of this process, and the strongest institution to give them the solution they are waiting for. So thank you so much.
Thank you
sorry
so
for
much.
the dog.
No, it was part of the webinar. Thank you so much for this introduction and for this presentation. I think it's for us very interesting to see, you know, the work that has been done, and we will actually we will work a little, talk about the manifesto also later on. But for now, I will invite Valentina Vasilenova to give us her, share with us her experiences in reaching women and delivering some way messages and engage women above all in Bulgaria. Valentina is Vice President of the Federation of Independent Trade Union in Agriculture in Bulgaria and President of the EFFAT Agriculture. So Valentina, I will now leave the floor to you. I think I need to make you co-host, and now you should be able to share the screen. Let me know if this is possible.
It is possible. It is possible. Yes. Do you see it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of this webinar. Now I'm putting my 10 minutes timer in order to be really in time. Even this is a big challenge to speak on this this very important issue from how to say, from another perspective. Let's say from the perspective of the countries who are the donors actually of seasonal working force, and mainly women. But nevertheless, I would like to show you not only the problems, but also the solutions that we are already in progress with many of them. Even in the difficult time of this last year of pandemic, we succeeded to make a lot of progress in favor of defending working rights and social rights and human rights of those vulnerable people that all of us, we are very much aware on them. And even right now, I am in a parallel meeting, very important meeting with our European social partners, counterpartners, means employers and the Commission, European Commission. And the point that we are discussing, one of the most important points we are discussing exactly is the seasonal workers right now and their rights, and many interesting solutions and proposals are taken, and I am very much in favor to share this with you in order to know that in our reality every action has its own part and important place. And the point is how we could interconnect ourselves in making making the progress, making the things in favor of the people we are actually decisive to work on for them. So you proposed my. Actually, you said that I will speak exactly on how we train and to equip the women before starting on their journey for seasonal work abroad. But I would like also to touch the point about the role of trade unions and how we as partners of the civil dialogue could be really in our place when it comes for combating labor exploitation. And I put this nice butterfly because all of us, we know this story about the butterfly when a single butterfly waves their wings somewhere in the ocean, in the middle of the ocean. In any case, somewhere on the shore, the change will appear. And I know that every one of you, we are those small butterflies waving in our reality and making the change for better for workers. Many things have been said regarding the sector of agriculture. I will not going to repeat this, but I only would like to underline once again that one of the problems of the sector, why it is so widely happening, the exploitation of workers, is the fact that actually the sector is very famous, actually notorious with the big share of informal employment, and part of that informal employment are exactly those seasonal workers, mainly of them who are women. This makes them vulnerable when it comes to labor rights, but also social rights and civil rights. Why the social partners, we are so engaged in this? Because we are exactly on the labor spot, on the workplace, near to those people, and at the same time we can make this change, this interconnection with the workers and with the policy-making process, policy-making and decision-making institutions. That's why we we pretend we are important in this chain, because what we make actually the voice of workers to be brought in the dialogue, in the social dialogue, in the civil dialogue, and with institutions, and the solutions to be taken also in favor of workers, not only in favor of other partners, for example, employers. I would like also to underline that our networks at national and transnational level work exactly for social justice and for dignity for workers and the workforce, not only in our countries, but also in different countries. Again, when we speak about the agriculture, we should be aware about the poor working conditions, the limits, and the limits that those people are facing in their daily routine. And for us as Bulgarian trade union, we are also very much concerned because we realized that more than 400,000 Bulgarian workers are yearly migrating to be seasonal workers in many countries of Europe. Most of them are going to Italy, but also many of them are going to Spain, to Greece, to France, even to North country of Europe like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, in Germany, in Austria, in Great Britain, in Netherlands, and this makes us very much in position to be as decisive as possible to bring to them the proper information, the good information, the decent information regarding their working conditions, legislative situation, social security issues, etc., etc. Because I already mentioned how important is the network, I would like to show you how it happens many years ago together with our Italian colleagues from Italy. They alarmed us for the difficult situation exactly of Bulgarian workers working in agriculture in the south part of Puglia. Those pictures you can see, they are exactly from very well-known ghettos near Foggia, but those are also our many meetings with people from different countrysides in Italy, in South part in Italy. Once again, together with our colleagues, we made also our visits in Spain. These are pictures of seasonal workers, so to say, campuses for seasonal workers in Huelva, in the south part of Spain. Those pictures are of our actions again in 2017, again in Foggia, after rejecting the Borgo Mezzanone ghetto. Those women you can see are women who are going to the field. In this van, taken and driven by their caporali, their intermediators, so to say. Those are workers, also Bulgarian, etc., and African workers on the fields. Yeah. What I want to show with this, that actually our actions are not sporadical, but constant, and almost every year we make such kind of campaigns, touching those workers and providing them with information. Why? Because for us it's important for them to make them aware about the important issues. First of all, their rights as European citizens, for decent working conditions, decent working rights, and also decent payment, for them to be aware where exactly they can take this information, and how to and where to address by in time of emergency. I also have prepared some slides showing how we work at national level with apart these field actions, how we work as social partners at national level when it comes for changing the political situation. I mean, the political from political perspective, the changing the laws, the regulations, etc. National level, we very much collaborate with national and sectoral council in debating those important issues, and drawing and agreeing different position papers, statements, with taking on board the demands of workers. Yeah, and another important aspect is the seal dialogue when we work together with different NGOs. One of important NGOs supporting us is exactly the Bulgarian how we call it, Center for Sustainable Communities, yes, represented here exactly by our colleagues here. But when it comes for European level, it is also another important aspect where our efforts give interesting results, and there we really could change the big picture and bring the interests of those workers and their rights at top level, and to ask and to demand for solutions taken from the European level. One of those solutions I am happy to share with with you, are exactly the last Commission guidelines regarding the seasonal workers taken in May. Then the resolution of European Parliament exactly not asking, but pushing the countries to take decisions for assuring the security, the health and safety of seasonal workers as important group which is providing the security, the food security of European Union. Then another interesting aspect is European Labour Authority, which right now we are discussing the common campaign targeted on seasonal workers, to see how are their working rights and social rights taken into account and respected at the level of field. Yeah, and that is very much supported by the dialogue process taken by EFAT and our counterpart, as I said, GEOPA-COPA. I also would like to say that because of our actions on the field and at the political level, the decisions for keeping the seasonal workers with disinfections, with covering clothes, protecting equipment, transport to the workplace and back to the housing situation. Actually the housing standards to be equipped and controlled, all those issues are duly agreed by social partners, and nowadays they are put into practice when it comes for regular and regulated workforce. Moreover, when it comes to irrespective of these rules, the signaling role is given to the trade unions, but also every one of workers could take this opportunity and to signalizing. Something else, how we addressed our women during the campaign taken and run very successfully with the equipe and team of the Center for Sustainable Communities. We made our education and our training for 40 women who are potentially or currently or experienced seasonal workers abroad, and we trained them in a very practical way what to know as labor rights, what to know as social rights, what to know about their integration, their social integration, what to know about the schools, they want to live in the country of origin, and having these 40 ladies actually, then they made their networking, their network, providing that information further in their community. It was absolutely great experience, showing us how the information, when it's proper, when it is in time and at high value, could be spread amongst the communities. I would say that those our labor mediators, they are still now, they are our ambassadors of dignity of work, of workers. Those pictures here on the screen show how we work actually with youths, because we realize that this is important to invest in education and information in youth people, in young people. The labor mediators from our from Stara Zagora are young women in the university, mainly from minority, providing those vulnerable workers that we have seen already in the previous slides. And on the next picture you see this is the Bulgarian class in a small village, Sera Capriola. This is the Bulgarian diaspora that already has been well integrated, and with the support of trade unions, they are actually having a Bulgarian language class in this school. One interesting and success story.
We should just try to arrive to the end. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you can then arrive to the conclusion.
I am going to the conclusion. Perfect. Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is another point of information providing in the country of not in departure, but in the country of work, meaning in Italy. This is our lady that is the ambassador for working rights. She also spread information, and here you can see a picture with our labor mediators from Montana. We are very proud with them. They are trained in the frame of Bright Project, and they will keep further sharing the information, giving and providing for us. At the end, yeah, the work that we have provided during the Bright Project can be summarized in this important brochure. What is the important and necessary information that every worker should have in his pocket before going to the seasonal work, but also where to address in a case of need. The last big picture you can see is saying there is anyway, in any case, you have to pay for your lunch, and we say that the workers are out of the menu. This is very important. The information is absolutely necessary, absolutely important in advance in the spot of your origin, but the connection and interconnection with the proper institution in the spot of their work, your work is also crucial. So I think with this project, we Bright. I appreciate. Once again, I would like to thank to Bright and to the the Bulgarian partner here, to say that together we really made a lot of changes, and we broke a lot of stereotypes and prejudices, and yeah, we made this change with our work, and hope this is not the last step. Thank you once again for giving me opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Valentina. Thank you so much. Indeed, I think for us was insightful to see how the trade union works, and how to address information, how to reach women. And as you said, when the information is delivered in time and in a proper way, then it's possible to see very successful results. But also we spoke about network and the importance of network and the importance of intervention of different types of actors. And this is in a way what we'll see with Marcella Iannuzzi from Lapsus, one of the partner of Bright, who will present us the comparative analysis of the Bright project, entitled Co-Producing Social Services, a Comparative Analysis in the Use of Processes, Tools, Partnership and Alliances between Citizen, Third Actor and Public Actors. So now I will leave the floor to Marcella, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Ayatol. I will speak in Italian.
Yes, you can speak in Italian, and for those who needs to listen the translation in English, they can just select the channel, English channel, and they will listen to the translation.
Okay, I can, potete vedere? Can you see? Okay, yes, one moment. Ok, all'interno del progetto di Bright, come Lapsus, abbiamo lavorato anche a una ricerca che esplorasse gli strumenti proprio che supportassero la collaborazione, la co-creazione, la coproduzione di servizi per i cittadini, coprodotti in collaborazione tra cittadini, terzo settore e municipalità, perché come ormai sapete lo strumento cardine del progetto Bright è il patto di collaborazione, e attraverso questa ricerca volevamo fare un'analisi comparativa per scoprire quali fossero altri strumenti simili con cui in qualche modo potessimo dialogare. La ricerca è molto ampia, io cercherò di essere molto breve e cercherò di presentarvi alcuni casi che ho incontrato all'interno della ricerca senza alcuna pretesa di completezza, ma partendo appunto, raccontandovi alcuni casi meno complicati, un po' più come dire semplici, fino ad arrivare a una complessità maggiore, ampliando un po' lo sguardo, non soltanto guardando al semplice servizio coprodotto, ma magari cercando di capire un po' meglio appunto le strategie di governance piuttosto che gli strumenti messi in atto. Sono partita da un'analisi di diverse del cambiamento, della trasformazione a cui stiamo assistendo inizialmente al momento per quanto riguarda il sistema del welfare, e ho ripreso un po' quelli che sono i cardini del cambiamento a cui assistiamo, in particolare concentrandomi ovviamente su quello che è il principio della sussidiarietà e il processo di decentralizzazione a cui stiamo assistendo ormai da decenni, e ovviamente concentrandomi sul principio di sussidiarietà che poi è alla base dell'implementazione del patto di collaborazione. Mi sembra interessante soffermarmi su questo perché il principio di sussidiarietà, oltre appunto a permettere a farci capire appunto che il governo del territorio e la gestione dei servizi funzionano meglio se a farlo sono i livelli più vicini al cittadino, ci ha avvicinato anche a come dire, ha partecipato alla costruzione di nuove narrative anche rispetto a quella che è la partecipazione dei cittadini, non soltanto in generale, ma anche nella costruzione di servizi di welfare. Quindi in qualche modo la sussidiarietà, sappiamo, è sì verticale, ma quella orizzontale ci racconta anche della possibilità dei cittadini, degli abitanti, di attivarsi e poter partecipare anche diciamo, allo sviluppo di servizi o alla cura di spazi nella città. E oltre a questo poi il cambio di visione ci fa pensare ai servizi di welfare non più come a livello assistenzialistico, ma anche come dire, un processo che possa aiutare l'autorealizzazione dell'individuo, la capacitazione di questo non soltanto nella soddisfazione dei bisogni primari, ma anche nella costruzione culturale dell'individuo a più ampio spettro e della partecipazione che esso può fare all'interno della società. Il prossimo passo è stato quello di cercare di capire con che strumento di analisi potete entrare all'interno dei diversi contesti europei per capire quali potessero essere gli strumenti capaci appunto di accogliere la partecipazione dei cittadini nella produzione di un servizio. Ho scelto la coproduzione, che è un processo di cui si parla ampiamente in tutta Europa, e la stessa Comunità Europea la supporta ampiamente come un processo partecipativo, in effetti, ed è un processo di produzione di beni o di servizi in collaborazione tra cittadini, come società civile, come cittadini o come associazioni, e municipalità, che è un attore pubblico, diciamo, che può essere visto sia come la città, l'ente pubblico, ma anche come chi eroga i servizi, quindi il servizio o il professionista stesso. Perché ho scelto la coproduzione? Perché in realtà le narrative che sottendono questa idea di questi processi sono molto simili a quello che poi in realtà stanno alla base dell'idea dei patti di collaborazione. In primo luogo comunque c'era il fatto che la coproduzione fosse comunque conosciuta in tutta Europa e venga addirittura comunque alimentata anche dalle narrative, dalle politiche europee. Ma d'altro canto in realtà la coproduzione sottende il fatto che i cittadini devono giocare un ruolo attivo nella produzione di un servizio o comunque nella vita nella vita pubblica, insomma. E tra l'altro in qualche modo anche questo loro partecipare alla vita attiva è legato anche a, come dire, a un significato della sussidiarietà a livello relazionale, quindi l'importanza delle relazioni all'interno del processo di sviluppo di una comunità. E l'altro fatto che mi aveva molto colpito era che comunque si raccontava la coproduzione come particolarmente importante perché per questo carattere trasformativo che poteva avere all'interno della costruzione delle routine, delle politiche istituzionali, ed è questo in realtà quindi questa capacità anche di agire sull'intelligenza delle istituzioni e di poterle trasformare in una direzione ovviamente più democratica. Quindi adesso vi racconterò una prima carrellata di esempi di coproduzione che sono a livello più semplice, quindi quando la coproduzione è compresa nel rapporto tra utente e comunque abitante e servizio sociale. È la forma un po' più semplice di coproduzione, ma è quella che viene più utilizzata soprattutto per quanto riguarda il Regno Unito e per esempio vi ho portato qui 2 esempi in cui effettivamente, per esempio, Famiglia in School Together, il professionista e i genitori del ragazzino lavorano insieme per coprogettare e poi coprodurre insieme un percorso insieme anche ad altri professionisti e non professionisti per supportare il ragazzo con difficoltà, e comunque c'è un processo anche di capacitazione dei genitori che accompagnano poi il ragazzo attraverso i propri strumenti. Molto presente la coprogettazione soprattutto nei servizi sanitari, quindi in questo campo troverete tantissimi progetti soprattutto in UK che si fa un po' portatore di questo, anche in maniera un po' retorica, di questa trasformazione del welfare attraverso la coproduzione. Vi porto poi altri piccoli esempi, per esempio rispetto all'housing, che sono un po' ho cercato di trovare degli esempi rispetto ai temi che avevano identificato le donne braccianti rispetto a quello che poi sarà il patto di collaborazione, quindi l'housing, la cura dei bambini e l'accesso ai servizi. Qui ho portato l'esempio di un Starbrook Project che è in campo dell'housing, la possibilità di offrire ai rifugiati un percorso abitativo in collaborazione con altri ragazzi residenti, diciamo, di Amsterdam. E questo processo non è tanto una coproduzione quanto un co-management, cioè una gestione e la produzione di servizi e attività all'interno di questo co-housing, come dire, sostenuto poi da un facilitatore esterno. In questo modo si favorisce l'inclusione dei ragazzi appena arrivati. Molto interessante anche per quanto riguarda l'accesso ai servizi è la storia del New Neighborhood Arnsberg di Germania, che è la storia in effetti di un rifugiato siriano che ha proposto direttamente al sindaco di farsi mediatore, lui personalmente, nell'accoglienza dei nuovi rifugiati come mediatore nell'accesso dei servizi, e questo ha creato una sorta di pool di ragazzi rifugiati che facevano da mediatori per i nuovi arrivi, accolti proprio all'interno dell'ufficio del sindaco. Quindi in questo modo si è creata una stretta collaborazione tra il sindaco, la municipalità e il gruppo di rifugiati, e insieme hanno poi costruito una serie di attività che poi si sono strutturate in un progetto, ma in questo caso non esiste in effetti un percorso formalizzato che definisca questo tipo di processi. Ho dovuto fare poi un passo un po' più in alto per cercare di capire meglio se esistevano altri tipi di strumenti, di contratti, di alleanze tra cittadini, terzo settore e municipalità, e mi sono resa conto che per abbracciare una complessità maggiore mi sarei dovuta spostare dalla sfera dell'influenza dei servizi sociali a quella legata alla costruzione di comunità, al welfare di comunità, in generale alle politiche di rigenerazione urbana. E su questo ho individuato una serie di corpi ibridi, di associazioni intermedie che mediano effettivamente il rapporto tra cittadini e municipalità nella coproduzione di servizi. Mi ha aiutato molto una tesi di dottorato di Meg Mullin, che parlava proprio di un'analisi comparata tra Inghilterra e Francia, e raccontava di come sono stati istituiti dei corpi intermedi, delle associazioni, sia in Inghilterra, Community Regeneration, che in Francia, Centre Sociaux. Ed è interessante anche nell'ottica dell'analisi comparativa, che in questo momento non vi sto raccontando molto, ma piuttosto vi porto degli esempi. Era molto interessante vedere come non esistessero davvero degli accordi, dei percorsi formalizzati o dei contratti tra cittadini, municipalità e terzo settore nella costruzione di questi servizi, che potevano essere, non so, del supporto per i bambini, delle attività per i ragazzi e per le famiglie, piuttosto che dei piccoli asili o delle attività per il quartiere. Non esistevano dei percorsi, ma appunto il mediatore, in qualche modo questi Regeneration Center, erano legati alle municipalità solo attraverso un contratto, che assicurava i fondi per sostenersi, che non aveva neanche una certa continuità. Molto diversamente invece sono istituiti i Centre Sociaux di Parigi, che devono essere invece riconosciuti. Le associazioni che vogliono diventare Centre Sociaux devono redigere un action plan che deve essere approvato dall'istituzione sociale che se ne occupa, e la stessa associazione deve redigere insieme ai cittadini un social plan dove vengono invece discusse insieme le iniziative che si vogliono portare avanti. Quindi in questo caso esiste già un contratto tra i cittadini e il corpo ibrido, diciamo, il Centre Sociaux, che fa appunto da mediatore con la municipalità, e dalla ricerca emerge che un percorso di questo genere formalizzato e riconosciuto ovviamente dà maggiore continuità e riconoscimento ai servizi coprodotti che poi vengono realizzati. Sono poi ancora salita di scala, andando a vedere cosa succede a Barcellona, che ha fatto un po' dei processi di coproduzione, della social innovation, del welfare di comunità, della cura dei beni comuni, un po' il suo cavallo di battaglia, e effettivamente ho ritrovato anche a Barcellona questi corpi intermedi che in questo caso sono la Casa del Barrio, 6 centri civici con vocazioni un po' diverse, una più artistica, l'altra invece più di lavoro sul quartiere, e questi corpi hanno effettivamente anche loro delle strette relazioni con gli uffici municipali, e si interfacciano con i cittadini, cercando all'interno poi di una struttura molto, come dire, molto calibrata sul tema anche della coproduzione di servizi, di produrre, di portare avanti comunque processi di coproduzione di servizi o di attività. In questo caso ci siamo spostati dai servizi sociali anche comunque al community welfare. Però mi sembrava molto interessante, per quanto riguarda Barcellona, proprio per aggiungere un po' di complessità a questo tipo di processi, raccontare anche come esistessero anche un altro tipo di coproduzione, che è di coproduzione, diciamo, di auto-organizzazione, che lavora nel quartiere e poi in qualche modo mettere in atto dei servizi, così come avviene in altri paesi, in tutti i paesi, ma a Barcellona è particolarmente, o in Spagna è particolarmente forte, e in particolare i movimenti urbani spesso nascono esperienze anche di coproduzione di servizi e di spazi, di attività negli spazi, molto, molto interessanti, e gli studiosi comunque sono d'accordo nel... Sto finendo, ti vedo, Dolinda.
No, non ti preoccupare, no, tranquilla.
No, gli studiosi sono d'accordo nel pensare che questo può essere un campo, quasi un laboratorio di coproduzione, nel momento in cui però questo tipo di produzione di servizi non si cominci a un processo di negoziazione con l'amministrazione e la società civile, per evitare ovviamente derive che possono essere anche privatistiche rispetto anche per esempio alla gestione di un bene. E questo tipo di negoziazioni possono effettivamente portare a nuove soluzioni e dare un contributo alla costruzione di questo nuovo welfare. È famoso il caso di Cambatlo, che è appunto questo spazio occupato in cui in realtà sono stati da molti anni sono stati istituiti una serie di servizi, di attività culturali, un po' come i centri sociali in Italia, ma qui particolarmente molto ben strutturato e anche seguito poi riconosciuto dalla municipalità un percorso di istituzionalizzazione, quindi c'è questo processo di negoziazione in qualche modo che ha fatto sì che Cambatlo, le associazioni, le realtà, i cittadini che lavoravano in Cambatlo si costituissero in un'associazione e così hanno stipulato una concessione di 50 anni tra municipalità e amministrazione. Da questo progetto poi è nato anche un interessante progetto sull'housing che comunque salto per arrivare un po' alle conclusioni. Perché in realtà in Spagna abbiamo visto come questo processo di coprogettazione in realtà è avvenuto soltanto in un secondo momento, in cui quando appunto è iniziata la negoziazione dopo un riconoscimento da parte della municipalità. Diverso invece è il caso dei patti di collaborazione. Io ritorno allo strumento dei patti di collaborazione che appunto facciamo così, che è un contratto, è un patto che coinvolge in maniera paritaria diversi attori, compresa la municipalità, ed è un processo formalizzato che permette quindi agli attori di cominciare un dialogo in maniera trasparente e formalizzata e riconosciuta, insomma. Volevo soltanto mostrarvi l'esempio della buona pratica che voi conoscete, che poi è il patto di Adelfia, la buona terra, che era il patto che ha fatto poi nascere Bright. Adelfia, questo patto di collaborazione, quindi prevedeva che le tre parti in causa, quindi la municipalità, le associazioni sul territorio e le donne braccianti, si mettessero al tavolo e decidessero che i loro compiti. In questo caso le associazioni si sarebbero... il tema del patto era la coproduzione di una scuola estiva e l'apertura per alcune ore in via sperimentale dell'asilo municipale. E in questo caso appunto le associazioni decidono che si occupano dell'implementazione dei workshop e dell'attivazione della Summer School, la municipalità dà quindi la sua disponibilità a seguire i tavoli di progettazione piuttosto che garantire il trasporto dei ragazzi, il trasporto della piscina, eccetera. Le donne stesse hanno portato la loro parte nella coprogettazione pagando 10 euro per settimana per la Summer School, in modo da formare un fondo che potesse supportare in maniera collaborativa, da decidere insieme, insomma, possibili servizi da implementare. Quindi per finire, in realtà all'interno della disamina i processi di produzione che sono stati presi in esame come dire, non hanno mai avuto un approccio di partecipazione e di coprogettazione, di coproduzione completo, e in qualche modo volevo mettere in evidenza come il patto di collaborazione inverta un po' come dire, l'approccio top down che generalmente viene utilizzato comunque in tutti i processi di coprogettazione, ma appunto permette un percorso formalizzato, regolarizzato, che permette un processo trasparente e democratico. Ce l'ho fatta.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us an introduction of what is the paper about, and I think that concrete examples are always effective to give the message, and for us I think was important to receive examples to understand what does it mean co-producing services and how to actually able to do it. So now we will go a little bit deeper into this topic, because we will have an example of a concrete example of co-producing a service with Pietro Elisei from Urban Sofia. Pietro Elisei is a town and regional planner, senior researcher and policymaker. He's an expert in urban regeneration policies. And today with Pietro we will talk about community-led urban transformation, local rooted projects as drivers for sustainable planning choices. So let's see if, so Pietro, I see you share the screen, so I leave the floor to you. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you see already, no, the presentation on the screen. Yeah, can I start?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you, Dolinda. In this presentation, I'm going to present, as you say, the real case study. But first of all, I'm going to connect two key important concepts to be considered in the urban and territorial transformations in terms of urban development or urban regeneration. That is actually the concept of community and the one of sustainable development. When we talk about sustainable development, this is still a very important concept for the design of many policies now at national or at local level. And sustainable development is usually associated with the environment, because basically at the very beginning this was connected to the Club of Roma, the report of the 70s that was speculating on the limits of growth and on the use of resources. But basically, we see that at least we have to consider other two dimensions, the social and the economic aspect. In reality, as we are going to see in the next slides, when we talk about sustainability, we have to consider more aspects. It's not just society, it's not just economy, it's not just environment, but it is more. First of all, it's strictly connected to community and to the change of the community. Because actually, as you see from this slide, the sustainable development concept reflects the societal change. In this sense, it is strictly connected to that invisible line of evolution of the local communities. The local communities are characterized by a continuity of change in roles and in the topics that the community is going to advocate at local level, at urban level, so at level of the city. And the continuity of this section, it's very important in a specific spatial context, because actually for us as urban planners, it is important to transform a space into a place, because in the moment that we have a place, we have something that is working, and this link can be done just through the work of the local communities. It's just the people that is capable to create places, and places are basically the center of every policy of urban development, urban regeneration, requalification, revitalization. No, we can use many names depending on what we are going to do, and in terms of methodology we are going to apply, or in terms of the investment we have at disposal. But anyway, the people are at the center of every good planning process, especially, as I said, at city scale. And the communities are very important, because this is the element that are going to generate those cultural values that can be tangible and intangible, that will enrich and enlarge the concept of sustainability. And this is a clear link, but I would like to show you an example. For example, this is connected to use of cultural heritage, and I bring you this example as I'm currently involved in the action 6 of the urban agenda on how to design strategic plans driven by cultural heritage for relaunching the economy of the cities in Europe. And we see how it's important, this sense of place, because it is generated by 3 elements connected to the sustainable development and to the community. I mean, duration, knowledge, and community together are going to create this sense of place that it is basically the relationship between people and the spatial settings, what we do as urban planners. And this is basically the key to start to design urban regeneration policies or urban development policies at city scale. But it's even the way to contextualize the action of the community in order to find local rooted projects. When we talk about sustainability, it's something that is keeping on is lasting on the long term. This is the real meaning of the sustainability. It's not something connected to a specific action oriented to the environment or to social inclusion. Sustainability is something that is working. So it's something that is going to be accepted by the citizens, by the local community. So lasting on the long term. And look, if we introduce the sense of place within the classic definition of the sustainable development itself become more broad and more useful, because actually then we see that we have to consider concepts like cultural landscape or creation of identity. And again, this kind of concepts give a lot of relevance to the action at local level of the community. Community that, if we are going to look at its etymology, means cum munus, so with a present. It is important to create a sense of place. That is basically the key to have successful policies, that we are capable to make possible the communities to create among them different networks, social, economic, cultural. And as we can see, the sustainability is more than even this dimension. We have the dimension of the governance, the dimensions of the logistic, but this is this will require another presentation, but just to give you the sense of this link between community and sustainability. Moreover, the local community is very important, as I said, in promoting economic regeneration. For years, we were working on models of public-private partnership. These models are no more enough. I mean, if we want to have effective and efficient policies at local level, we need to introduce a 4P, I mean, public-private people partnership. This is giving us a more broad line of action, especially at city and neighborhood scale. And they say, I mean, the involvement of the community is essential in all these actions that are going to counteract phenomenon of social exclusion, not just in terms of capacity building, but even actually in terms of creating jobs at local level, or many other initiatives. I mean, we saw in the previous presentation a lot of case studies that basically, you know, are working on this kind of inclusion. And finally, it's even important the community in order to co-create and co-design a solution in order to give to neighborhoods or part of the cities, and in general in project oriented to the cities, new perspectives. I mean, it is not possible to consider, I mean, a top-down approach, an institutional approach. Everything, every move we make in the city should be co-planned, co-designed, co-created with people. In this sense, I mean, local routing, the planning choices is really a key in order to have really success in our decision making, in our as public administrator, as decision maker, as professionals, and even as leader of local communities. And the sense of place, it's even important in order to understand this digital revolution that we are living currently in our cities. We saw that at the end of the 90s, the internet was changing our life, and then even though these mobile phones, then they came the geographic information system, and so we jump into the mobile internet, mobile GIS. But I mean, this was something, but not enough. If we work with the element that characterize the city, that is the place, and our work of planners, you can see how the possibility of working even with technology and in this realm of smart cities, digital change, and we can use all the trendy and terms that we know, is really open new domain of action for the local economy, for the economy of the cities. And then I come to my case study. It's SPIRE, Smart Post-Industrial Regenerative Ecosystem. This is a project financed by the European Commission under the program Urban Innovative Action. I'm an expert for this program. But in this case, I was working as designer, and this is in the city of Baia Mare. Baia Mare is the former mining capital of Romania, where actually I live now. And this city was one of the most polluted, it is one of the most polluted cities in Europe, especially in terms of heavy metal present in the soil. We have heavy metal even at still 6-7 meters under the level of the soil. This project, of course, is contributing to achieve a number of the sustainable development goals, but I would like you to introduce really to the project. As you see, this kind of project, this kind of urban initiative, urban innovative initiative, and I want to remember that just 75 cities all over Europe got this kind of financing, is cross-cutting different topics that we have in the moment that we try to relaunch the economy of a city. This is a big action of urban regeneration. I mean, the environment, the industry, and the energy sector, the social cohesion, the public health, and the research. Sorry, the slides are in Romanian, but I'm translating for you. The most important points that beyond the intervention, physical intervention, that are really looking at the phytoremediation of the soils in some spots area of Baia Mare, there are even some integrating the soft strategic action, like the creation of a hub. So we are going to renovate an historical building to create a sort of urban center hub where all the stakeholders, all the protagonists on the local level, all the private companies that want to have a say, they can join and shape, design the policy at local level. This is very, very important to have such kind of places. We saw even in the previous presentation of Marcella that many neighborhoods are going to open this kind of offices, but this is an office that is working especially on nature-based solution, on counteracting this problem of the heavy metal, and to create a new economy, post-industrial economy for this city. But the maybe most innovative action we were proposing is the creation of the iLeu. You should know that the Romanian currency is called leu, but we had a problem. We had a problem that it is a problem that is all over Eastern Europe, where we still don't have a very well developed multi-level governance, and we have very strong centralistic position. But as we explained before, in order to have good policies, we need to have local rooting. We have sustainability, something that is happening at local level. Now, remember the slogan of 1992, no? So think global, but act local. But to act local, you need to have resources, even financial resources. And if the general system is not providing you the resources, you can invent local currencies, because actually community can generate money. And we created this ILEO, that is immaterial local environmental utility. I mean, when we think about utility facilities in the city, we always think in terms of standards, tangible standards, school, parks, and I don't know, many other services, infrastructure, primary, secondary infrastructure. But a standard, an urban standard, can be even immaterial, because you create a pool of resources at local level that basically consent you to take action, even in the moment that you have a centralistic government. So you give power to the local level. And how you can mine this, so you have this money in your mobile phone, it's very easy to use. The ILEO, you can mine the ILEO through good and environmental friendly behavior. So if you use the public transport, you get some ILEOs. If you participate in civic action, you get ILEOs. If you go to work using the bicycle, you get ILEO. And if you are going to refurbish your house and you are going to use a specific methodology of passive architecture or energy efficiency, you get ILEO. And you can respend this ILEO at local level with those companies that are going to accept this, to pay the local taxes within the municipalities. Of course, we are now defining all these steps, but this is the intention. And the ILEO is already, if you go on the Google Play, you can basically download and see how it works. So this is the scheme, the working scheme: municipality, citizens, private companies, NGO, all together in a local system based on these local currencies, that is immaterial local environmental utility. And again, this is possible to have such kind of practices that are really innovative and can give more power to cities and to difficult projects like this one, using basically all the elements that you have at horizontal level. So as I said before, the public-private people partnership, we can call it quadruple helix, quintuple helix, but we have to work a lot on this horizontal level, even to enrich the vertical one in the moment that it is missing the system of the multi-level governance. I think that I am done, and I would like to thank you for your time and attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pietro. Even in this case, we had a very practical example about how different actors gather and have the same goal, and together they try to co-create a new service to respond to specific needs. So thank you so much. I first would like to ask if there are some questions for the speakers. Let's see if we have some questions. You can also use the chat, as always, to ask questions to the speakers. If not, I will share my screen to reach more or less the conclusion. So as we said in the beginning, this is the last webinar, so we reached the final moment of these webinars. What happened next in the Bright project? So the next steps will be the organization of 5 capacity building workshops Ideally, the workshop should be organized in Italy, Romania, Bulgaria, Spain, and Greece. The aim of the workshop is to, first of all, provide tools to foster mobile citizen inclusion and to discuss about how and the possibility to apply collaboration agreements, as well as to discuss about gender responsive public services and to, of course, engage citizens, empower citizens, as well as all the actors of the community. So now I would like to engage the participants this webinar to share with us some feedbacks about which is the situation in their community and how we could then in a second stage organize the workshop targeted to the needs of first of all the community of interest of the Bright project, but as well as in even the participants of this workshop that are in the countries where we will have the workshop. So I will share with you this link. That it's a link to the platform that it's called Padlet. So I first need to stop sharing before so that I can use the chat. So I will send this link to the chat and you can access it. These links is aimed to just to engage in some way all of you to share your feedbacks and your ideas, your experiences by answering to these questions. Of course, all of you are more than welcome just to open the microphone and just to raise their voices and just share with us what they think about this question. But also, if you prefer, you can use this Padlet. I will explain you how to use it. So the main question that we would like to know from you are, what are the main obstacles and limits that limit or deny the exercise of rights of citizens in your territories? What community welfare action do you have, or do you know, and do you have in place or active, or can be activated to overcome these obstacles? What relations between association and or with institution do you need to establish for your projects, and what are the problems in setting up this network? And as well, to conclude, which team do you think, which topic do you think it's more suitable and more for you it's more important to discuss during the workshop? So I will open and I see that already somebody started to answer. So it's very easy to answer and to use. You can just click on this plus that you find under the questions. And by clicking on this plus, you can, if you would like, you can, and then you can write your answer. Also, I invite you, all of you, also to, if you prefer, to share, to open the microphone. But I see that already somebody started to answer, for example, to the main question. So, what are the main obstacles that limit or deny the exercise of the right of citizens in your territories? And I see that blind public services, then lack of trust in local public administration. I don't know who wrote this comment. Maybe somebody would like to, the person who commented maybe would like to either writes the country in which, thing with the microphone, just to understand better to what are these comments refer. We have also difficulties to the local services. I see that other, okay, from Romania. Thank you for completing the answer. Then I see, if we go to the second question, what community welfare action do you have in place or can be activated to overcome these obstacles? So we have pact of collaboration with agri-female workers, agri-companies and local bodies in Italy. This is an example of community welfare action. We have ad hoc project financed directly or indirectly by EU. So maybe for this, would you like maybe to add something and tell us a little bit more about this kind of projects? I cannot call the person because I don't see the name here, but I invite the person who wrote this comment to maybe tell us a little bit more about these ad hoc projects. Let's see. Then I also see that from Bulgaria, the main obstacles are social infrastructure, poor knowledge on civic rights, and active citizenship. And I see also that one of the main obstacles is also the lack of interest from local administration. Then, if we go to what relation between association and or with institution do you need to establish for your projects, and what are the problems in setting up this network? We have an answer from Italy: shifting power between companies and workers, a lack of trust. This is also and then I start also to see which are the main topics that are more suitable for the workshop. So we see that an idea for Italy is the role of public services in accessing rights. What the institution can do to have mobile workers in their journey abroad. Okay, so if we come back to the second question, I see that the ad hoc projects for community welfare action is, for example, yeah, the Spark project we just talked about, yeah. And then yeah, I see also that concerning the relations between different actors, we have a comment that says that it's important to create places to make local actors to interact. So hubs, urban centers, that's very important too, as well as it's important to receive funds, of course, to have somebody who can actually manage and to follow and establish the networks. That's also quite important. Yes?
Can I ask in which country is this one, create places to make local actors to interact?
This one, the one that I just read, like, okay.
Yes,
yeah.
it's important under the
Always
third.
Romania.
Yes, Romania, okay. Okay.
But even for Italy.
I'm asking because as a result of the first reflection action cycle in the Calabria region, women workers decided to put in place something like hub where they will co-create solutions with local administration and companies and other women, because we are working with women in agriculture, as you know, but by telling the Bright Project, also other Romanian women are coming to us, and especially the ones which are employed in the care system. I mean, they take care of relatives of other people, no, as a job. And they are coming to us also because they find important to have an hub in which they could have peer solutions and interact with others. Of course, not in
Yes, so to have a space to create a dialogue and to share ideas and share needs. So to have a concrete space to go when.
Linda, if I can intervene on this issue, this is very, very important. I mean, not just for the relevant policies. Now we have a tradition in Italy, for example. Now I'm not talking about Romania. I mean, let's go back to my origin, Italy. I mean, with the first urban center in Italy in Bologna, or even now the urban center in Torino that changed recently in name, that are great example on how this kind of centers should work, but connected to the theme of the thematic of agriculture. I would like to suggest you to have a look of another very important project, the MAC Monteruscello Agro City in Pozzuoli, Napoli, that I had the fortune to follow for the European Commission, where they created an agro-urban center as, again, as hub, as a place to relaunch the local economy of a very deprived neighborhood with a serious project, requalified and relaunched through urban agriculture, but not urban agriculture in terms of small scale, professional urban agriculture, so industrial urban agriculture within a neighborhood. And again, this instrument of the urban center that we can, in this case, agro-urban center, we can call it, they have many different names. It's really, really consenting to move things and to have a dialogue at horizontal level. That is the essential dialogue we need to really to move things in the cities.
Maybe you can even send the link if there is in the chat. So maybe if you have a website you can even of this project, maybe other participants would like to know more. So yeah, you can use the chat. I see also among the team that the topic for the workshop that we have a suggestion for Italy about how to improve the opportunity to be involved in the decision-making process, as well as the role of third sector in community welfare and co-production, and what the institution can do to help migrant workers in their journey abroad. So I also suggest all of you to always write the country, at least, you refer to, next to your comments. So for us, it's going to be also easier later on to analyze the answers. Okay, so I will leave the link. And sorry, to conclude, I just see the last comment regarding what community welfare action do you have in place and can be activated to overcome these obstacles. From Bulgaria, we have a comment that says that active regional local programs targeted in education and empowering the women in rural regions. So this is an example about community welfare action. Thank you so much for sharing it. Okay, so as I was saying, I will leave this the link of this Padlet open. So even when the webinar will be finished, you can always come back to the Padlet and add other questions if somebody else come to your mind you would like to share with us, because we will in any case be able to see it even later on. I see that other participants are still answering. For example, regarding the obstacles for the right of citizens, project-based action, when the project finish, we face the problem of the end of the project, I imagine. That's true. That's an issue that needs to be addressed. Yeah.
Just a suggestion. Maybe we could also leave open this link within the next week.
Yeah.
And then we could put all the answers in a matrix, which will be shared. Just to explain why we need this matrix for the organization of the 5 workshops, would you like to introduce the theme of participatory way to define the national issue for the workshop?
Grazie, sorry, I didn't understand the last sentence.
Solo se vuoi già introdurre il tema rispetto alla partecipazione, scusami, alla scelta di fare i workshop in maniera partecipativa già nella fase di progettazione. Sorry, just in Italian to quickly understand each other.
Yeah, so like we will, I think, talk in the next session with partners about workshop, but yeah, we will go a little bit deeper about it, because we, as I was saying before, we were planning to have the workshop actually in the months we are living in, and until June, of course. During COVID time, our plan changed a little bit, so we will talk about the technical organization of the workshop after the end of the webinar. But yeah, as I was saying, we are now exploring the needs of the partners as well as the community of interest to understand on what to focus the workshop, of which specific theme and topic, and so that we can actually organize the workshop targeted by to the needs of the partners of the country we are going to organize it, and so to organize it in such a participatory way. I don't know if maybe Grazia, you want to add something regarding it?
No, just to underline that we need to take care of this Padlet, because it will guide us for the next workshop, which will be like a brick, very big brick in bright.
Yeah. So again, we will leave this link of the Padlet open. So also you might able to share it among your colleagues. Maybe they could not attend the meeting today, and you can reflect on this later on. And like we will in any case send the follow-up email with the link and the specific information, but we will leave it open until next week so that you can, until the whole week, you can come back to it and fill it in and complete it. Yeah, so I think we can come to the conclusion of the webinar so that then we can then continue with and to discuss about the workshop. So I think that so if anybody else want to add anything, the only thing I would like to say is that we will send you and to all the previous participants a questionnaire to evaluate the webinars, the organization of the webinar, and the overall topic that you discussed and that we discussed together in the previous webinar. So I invite all of you then to fulfill this questionnaire that will help us to do better next time, and also to understand how to improve our work. So you will receive it in the follow-up email. And from my side, I thank all the speakers who took the time to join us and to share with us their experiences. And I thank all of you for participating. And I also thank the interpreters who help us in sharing the information in Italian and in Spanish. So thanks to Sabela and Franco. So from my side, I think we can conclude the webinar. And yeah, to answer to the question of Pietro, if the speakers are okay, I can share the presentation in the next days. So I will ask for the consent of the speakers, and then I can share it with the participants. Okay, so I think then, Grazia, we can then continue with
Yes, thank you so much. I hope to see you in presence for our workshop. We hope so.
finger crossed.
Yes, and for any question or just reflections on this webinar, please text us and send us your opinion. We will go also for this very interesting project in Pozzuoli. So thank you so much, Pietro. We will study what you are doing because one of our dream is the rural house of women, but it needs a lot of funds and never give up. Maybe one day. So thank you so much, and I kindly invite the partners to stay for our monthly meeting.
Bye.
Bye, Pietro. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you, Sabela. Thank you, all the participants.